What's going on, guys? We are back with another episode, and this week we're covering the 5 things you should know before you buy a house. So, Pete, what's going on, man? You want to lead us off and talk about the first thing that you should know before you buy a house?
What's up? Yeah, for sure. So these are some things that, Scott and I were kind of thinking over, like, what are some things that people should know and maybe not as common knowledge? So the first thing we're going to start off with is mortgage payments can change. So mortgage payments, you start off when you're first going through the whole thing and getting pre-approved and figuring out what your offer is on a house, you're super focused on how much that monthly mortgage payment is, which is good. And you should be focused on that because that's what's most important. But understanding that every year taxes go up, but probably even more importantly is you can't do much about taxes going up, right? We know that. But your homeowner's insurance also tends to creep up year over year over year. And homeowners tend to forget about that and they don't always get new quotes. So it's always a good idea to get, quotes, kind of every 2 years is probably where I would recommend that. But just keep in mind that that mortgage payment is not locked in. So it is something that does go up a little bit every month.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because the taxes specifically is something that I see pop up a lot on like the local town Facebook groups because people get that sticker shock when all of a sudden the town sends out notification that hey, your taxes are going up X amount of dollars, and just know that most of the time your taxes are part of your escrow account for your mortgage. So that mortgage payment by default is going to have to go up to cover that increase in taxes. Something that you might expect that taxes are going to go up because that's a fact of life. But at the same time, just know that that will impact your mortgage payment going up as well. So
Absolutely. And it can vary that first year. Sometimes if the home is undervalued or underassessed, it can be pretty big. But always just check with your realtor, see where the taxes seem to fall in line with the rest of the houses, and you'll have a good idea to be able to prevent that or at least be able to anticipate it. So number 2, Scott, what do you got for number 2?
So this is part of what we do for all of our home buyers and home sellers, but reaching out to the town and getting a copy of all of the permits that have been open and hopefully closed on that property. Super important because if you're buying a home, the last thing you want to do is get to 2 weeks out from closing and find out that the seller has an open permit that's going to delay the closing. But the other thing, assuming there aren't any issues with permits, is that I like it as kind of like a fact-telling, fact-finding part of buying a house. Oftentimes, a seller might not know when the roof was installed, especially if it was installed by the previous owner. And your home inspector is going to come out and give you a rough idea. Hey, this roof looks like it's probably about 15 years. But more often than not, a roof is a big item that requires a permit when it's installed. So you'll actually know how old your roof is. Same thing with like furnaces, hot water heaters. It's a good way to start to kind of like paint the picture of the ages of the different major systems in your house. So that's my number 2 tip. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a great point, being able to kind of get a better idea of how old those units are. And you can usually tell if something was installed without a permit because there won't be a permit inspection sticker on it. But it's just a good, if it looks new and you pull the Oprah report and there's nothing pulled, you know that it was done without a permit. So just a good way to double check before you get into anything.
Absolutely. And so, somewhat related to this, right? We always want to make sure we're using good quality contractors when we're getting work done on our home. So, number 3 tip here, Pete, is do we just go out and get one quote?
Yeah, no, that's so our third tip is, always get multiple quotes. We see it a lot. We see, does anybody know so and so in, does landscaping, does plumbing, who's the plumber? They go on Facebook and look, a lot of times you can get some good recommendations, but you never just want to get one. Even though they're very familiar, it's a great place to start, but you always want to compare them with some of the other people in your community, in your local area, to come out and give you a quote on work so that you're getting everything done right, and you're getting what's a fair price. I don't want to say the best price because quality comes at a price in most cases, but a fair price and someone who's competent.
Yeah, and I actually even, being a realtor, I learned this one the hard way was, when I bought my 2-family, I had this horrendous looking all pink bathroom and like I just couldn't possibly imagine anyone using the toilet in there with a clean conscience. So I went onto a Facebook group. I didn't have a go-to plumber in town. I grabbed the first one that I saw, called them, had them come over, install. Did a great job, but my God, the price that I paid to have a toilet installed. And I'm never the person to say go with the lowest quote, because oftentimes I think that person is probably cutting corners. But that's why get 3 quotes, get an idea, even if it's as simple as a toilet install. I've since installed other toilets at a drastically cheaper price, and they've been just fine. So definitely shop around and make sure you're getting a great contractor who's also giving you a fair price.
All right. So now tip number 4. So we all want to save money, right? That's like the name of the game in life. So Scott, how can you save money on your mortgage payment or on the life of your loan?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite tricks. And I remember hearing it early in my career on one of my first closings. And it, like, at the moment, blew my mind, because it's not the kind of thing they teach you in real estate school. They should. But it's that there's a couple ways to save here. If you were to make one extra mortgage payment every single year, and or the easier way to stomach doing that can be to either pay your mortgage bi-weekly. So you would just pay half of your mortgage payment. Your payment is $2,400. You're going to pay $1,200 every 2 weeks, and that will add up to an additional payment over the course of a year. Or you could say, hey, my $2,400 payment, I'm going to cut that, divide that by 12, and I'll add $200 a month to what I'm paying for my mortgage. Both of those are going to give you the same exact outcome, because not everybody has that extra $2,400 at the end of the year ready. You're buying Christmas presents. Last thing you want to do is have to go shell out an extra $2,400 or whatever your mortgage payment is. So 2 avenues to paying one extra full payment, and you can drastically save both years off of your mortgage, but also those interest payments add up and they compound. So you can save thousands of dollars by simply doing one extra payment every year.
Yeah. And 2 little things to add to that is, the sooner you can start that, the better off you are, right? That's why we say when we first bought our houses, or when you first buy a house,
Yep.
if you can go in with that from the first payment, you're going to be able to, or the first year, I should say, you're going to be able to cut it off because of the way it compounds. You're going to cut off a lot of time. And the second is always make sure you're making payments to the principal only. You don't want to just go in there and make an additional payment or an extra payment that's going towards principal and interest. You want to make sure it's going to principal only.
I'm glad you brought that up, dude, because that is a big defining factor. And you want to make sure that when you're like on your mortgage payment screen, there should be an extra line that says additional towards principal, because you wouldn't want to just say, hey, I'm paying, $3,000 this month on a $2,400 payment. The mortgage company will just take that and put it towards interest, and that's not what you're trying to do. So
yeah, you're not going to get there.
So what's our final tip in our top 5 here?
So number 5 comes from personal experience. So number 5 is check the garbage schedule and the garbage guidelines, and just kind of a lot of more like just the town, services. You want to go to your local municipality, get the recycling schedule, get the garbage schedule. So when I moved to Clifton, I didn't do that. Come to find out that Clifton separates the green bottles from the brown bottles, from the clear bottles, from the cans, from paper to cardboard. So needless to say, I was a little surprised when I put that whole can out the first time, and they're like, dude, you got to recycle, you got to split all this up. I was like, what? But there are also some other towns that don't provide garbage pickups, right? You might have to, source your own garbage pickups and do some different things like that. So, and that really just kind of sums it up by saying, ask as many questions, any and all questions throughout the process. You want to, of course, work with somebody who's going to take the time to research that stuff if they don't know it already, and just really be patient, because when you're buying your first house, there's a big learning curve, typically going from renting or living at home to owning a home. So you want to make sure you do as much of your due diligence as possible. But if you work with good people, you'll be set up for success. But these are some things that we learned over the years from our own personal experiences, from working with clients. Scott, you got anything else to add?
No, I would just say drop them in the comments if you've got other tips for those home buyers out there, something that you've maybe have experienced firsthand. We'd love to add to the conversation, and maybe it'll make for another episode in the future.
That's a great point. What's one thing you wish you knew before you bought your first house? So that does it for us, guys. Scott and Pete here on Behind the Curtain. Drop a comment, smash that like button, and we'll see you on the next one.